Hi, this is Tim Hamilton and
John Fernay.
And we're the co-hosts of the Maryland Crabs.
Today we're here with a crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? It's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. So stay tuned and check it out.
And make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. Go.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Casey Chambers and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Arundel County. Our county league is sponsoring this mayoral candidate forum with the assistance of the county branch of the American Association of University Women as a public service to the citizens of Annapolis. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. As an organization, the League does not support or oppose political candidates or parties, ever. League candidate forums follow strict guidelines to ensure that all candidates are treated equitably and to provide voters with candidates' answers on a diverse range of topics. Our moderator will explain the forum procedures for our candidates. Ground rules for the audience are listed on the back of your program. Pre-warned repeating. Please silence all cell phones. Audience use of cameras or audiovisual recording equipment is prohibited. Kindly refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate during the forum. Please also take a moment to read the instructions regarding questions from the audience and raise your hand if you need a question card or have one to be collected. Now that we have the ground rules down, I'm delighted to introduce Susan Cope-Patsett, who has once again agreed to be the moderator of our forum. Ms. Cope-Patsett is a lecturer and award-winning broadcast journalist who serves as director of Maryland Newsline, the nightly news show produced by advanced broadcast news reporting students as part of the Mayoral College of Journalism's Capital News Service program. Maryland Newsline airs on cable channel UMTV. We appreciate Ms. Cope-Patsett's generosity in contributing her time and past experience as a moderator to this event. Please join me in welcoming her back to the stage.
Good evening. We will try and keep things on track and moving quickly. Our candidates are seated obviously to my right. We have folks in front who will help in making certain that we stay on time with the limits. Let me first introduce our candidates before I go over some of the procedures and the rules. We will start with our Republicans. Mike Pantelides, who is second to my right, is an Annapolis native, elected mayor in 2013, serves on the Governor's Workforce Development Board, is a board member of the 21st Century Education Foundation, a board member of the Annapolis and Anne Arundel County Visitors Bureaus. He also serves on the Governor's Opioid Intervention Team Senior Policy Group. He's a member of the County Executive's Heroin Task Force. On the Legislative Committee for the Maryland Municipal League, he is a past vice chair of the Baltimore Regional Transit Board, and he happens to be an Eagle Scout. My son's troop 771, my son is also an Eagle Scout. I had to throw that in. Nevin Young, as well, is a graduate of St. John's College, right here in Annapolis, a graduate as well of George Washington University School of Law. Practices law here in Annapolis and has been doing that since 2005. He also serves as an adjunct professor at Arundel Community College. He is a veteran, both with the Maine Air National Guard and the Massachusetts Air National Guard. On the Democratic side, we have John Astle on the far right, a Marine veteran who joined the Corps in 1966, serving 9 years of active duty, 21 years in the reserves, including a tour of Vietnam as a helicopter pilot and a tour as a presidential helicopter pilot. Military honors include the Legion of Merit, Purple Hearts, Meritorious Service Medal, and the Presidential Service Badge. John has been a member of the Maryland House of Delegates from District 30. He is currently in the State Senate, where he serves as the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee and Chair of the Anne Arundel County Senate Delegation. And Gavin Buckley, who is here in Annapolis, which I understand was a port of call for you on a bit of a trip around the part of the world anyway. And he married a native Annapolitan before they both put down roots here. He's worked in the restaurant industry before opening his own businesses, and those businesses include, and they will be familiar to many of you, Tsunami, Lemongrass, Metropolitan, and Sailor Oyster Bar. Gavin has been involved in preserving several historic houses here in Annapolis. Now for the procedures for this evening's candidates forum. For the remainder of this first hour, we'll be focusing on three pre-selected areas for discussion, and our candidates should all have received that in the letter that came with the invitation. Each of the candidates will have up to 2 minutes to speak on the segment topics, and what we'll do is we'll open it up, and each one of you will be able to address that, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. After that, each of you will have a chance to respond to the other. You'll be able to interact. I'll do my best as sort of traffic cop to keep you going, but feel free to address one another. For the second hour, we'll be taking questions from you, the audience. Please write your question down if you haven't already, indicating whether you would like to have that addressed to one candidate or multiple candidates, or whether it's just a general question that I can ask to everyone. The League of Women Voters has a committee that will be screening the questions, looking for clarity, brevity, appropriateness, and duplication. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer the questions and respond to the questions that you have provided. Somewhere around 8:45, as close as possible, we'll begin to wrap up. Each of the candidates at that point will have up to 3 minutes for some closing remarks. That will be followed by some closing remarks from the League of Women Voters as well, and a reminder to go vote next week. All right, at this point, we are going to begin with our first topic area, something which has brought a fair amount of controversy over years, development. Gentlemen, and I'm going to begin, because I couldn't think about a more difficult way to do this, simply by alphabetical order. I just think we'll advance it from that. If you could, give us your vision, both from a long and short-term view, for how development in Annapolis should be handled. And with that, we'll start with John Astle.
It's been alphabetical since I was in the first grade. My mic's not on? No. Hello?
That's okay.
Is the mic on now? Yes. Okay. You can hear me? I'm getting some yeses and some nos. Yes. I'm getting some,
a little more volume would help.
Speak louder. I'm talking into the microphone. Now wow. Okay, guys, you got to relieve the mic. Development is one of the really critical issues. You know, I've lived here for a long time, not as long as some, and more than others. My wife and I bought our house here in 1971. We raised 2 boys to adulthood in downtown Annapolis. So we've seen a lot of changes in our community. Not all of them good. And certainly, people love this community, and they want to come here and live. And so development has become part of that. To bring them here, to create the tax base, to do the things that we think we need in our community, we've had to do that. But unfortunately, in my opinion, the rules that regard development have not clearly written. Now, right now, we have 1 minute left. We have 2 developments that are important. They're lawsuits. So we're going to have judges make critical decisions about zoning and development, which really ought to be made by those of us who've been elected to public office. So I think one of the first things that we need to do is to slow down this process of unbridled development and get clearly written laws so that we know exactly what it is we're dealing with, and we can do the right kind of development to make our community what it is. And thank you very much.
Mr. Buckley?
Can you hear me? The first words I have to say are, it's my 20-year anniversary tonight. I couldn't be here for my amazing wife that has supported me all along. Usually when I have an idea to do something, she says that's a stupid idea. But she has been supportive of this from the moment I said I was going to run. On development, you know, what I'm seeing happen is the whole perimeter of the city is getting hammered with development. Right? So we complain about traffic, but a lot of it's been out of our hands. And I don't think we're putting enough constituent pressure on the county and on the development that's happening on the perimeter of the city. So we need to all look at that and say, You know, we need to have some say in that because we made the votes to put those guys in office. Locally, I think we need thoughtful development. We need development because it brings jobs and it brings tax base. And we need a tax base in this town. We are upside down on every budget every year, and so we need some income. So I don't have the popular answer that is to pull the drawbridge up and stop everything and close the door, because I think what we've done on West Street is thoughtful development. We've taken our development to the community. We've got the community's input, and before it gets in the front page of the paper, we have community support for the projects that we do. So I think that's the way you go about development. You get people around the table before things happen. And in this town, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter if you're a resident trying to do an addition, or if you're a business owner or a developer. If you think the system is broken, so we have to fix our codes. We have to make them black and white. People want to play by the rules, but we just want to know what the rules are. Thank you.
Pantelides.
Land use and development issues are probably the most important issue that affect the city of Annapolis, and it's about protecting our quality of life. If you look at the last election, the two issues that won with the election were what was happening at the old Fawcett's building and what was happening in Crystal Spring. People were fed up. They said, we've had enough, and enough is enough. We can't go on. And you look at what we've done over the last 4 years. We've put a halt to excessive development that would hurt your quality of life and have you sitting in traffic. And I'll go over those two examples real quick. The first one is the Fawcett's building. They wanted to propose something that was 3 stories tall, would have ruined the historic character of Annapolis. The day I got elected, the developer pulled out. And that's why elections matter. On the Crystal Spring front, I took a strong stand against it. My opponent was for it, wanted to see it built. I was against it. And to date, nothing's been built on that property. In fact, the original developers of that plan went back to Connecticut. And that massive development they wanted to do, with commercial the size of the town center, they had a number of townhomes, an inn, an amphitheater. That's gone and will never go away. But what comes next? What's going to happen at Providence Point may be more important than what they planned at Crystal Spring, because we could end up with something worse. I've taken a strong stand on what I think is right for the citizens of Annapolis. That initial plan had been rejected, mostly for technical reasons, and I promise to stand by you. I'm proud to say that I got the League of Conservation Voters endorsement. One of the reasons was my stand at excessive development that would ruin the environment and hurt our quality of life. Thank you.
Mr. Young.
I guess I'll sit down. I don't really like to talk sitting down. All right. The two major development issues we have right now are the Eastport Landings proposed project and what used to be Crystal Springs and is now called Providence Point. My position on the Providence Point plan is this. This project has been scaled back by about 2/3. Now complies with what the Sierra Club put in a demand letter or a position letter a couple of years ago. People are still saying no. The city rejected the plan a couple of weeks ago, saying it's not specific enough. But what you might notice is they didn't say it because it was too big. So there's been a substantial reduction in the size, and there's also been a dedication of the project to a retirement community. What I haven't been able to find out from the present administration is what do they actually think is too big. They say it's still too big, but they won't say what the size should be. I think that if we keep reflexively saying no, then the city will ultimately end up in court with these developers and nobody will win. It's time to sit down with the people who own that property and work something out that will allow us to create jobs for the 4 boards in the city that are right next door to that property, that will allow us to have a retirement community there where most of the people don't need to drive during rush hours, where they don't have children in school, where they will spend money in the community, and where it will be a nice place to live. Remember when you came to Annapolis and you came here from somewhere else, you wanted a nice place to live. You don't just get in the treehouse and pull up the road. You have to be moderate and reasonable and look at the positives of this as well as the negatives. And I know this has been looked at as a campaign strategy. You just keep saying no to development. But, okay, on Eastport Landing, it is too big, but they have a right to build something there. And I think the community group that said 61 units was correct. We've had fiasco with planning and zoning over the whole way.
Let me follow up. Each of you made some interesting points. John Astle, you talked about how the rules are not fairly written for development. How should they be? And I would love to get the reaction of all three candidates to the senator's comments.
Well, Sue, I'm not a builder, I'm not a developer, and I'm not a zoning use lawyer. But in talking to people as I've been knocking on doors, I've talked to builders, I've talked to architects, I've talked to people who say, look, I'd love to work in Annapolis, I just want to know what the rules are so I know. Because you'll hear somebody say, well, you know, I got an answer from the city, and I started a project, I'm spending money, and then I take some plans in and find out, oops, I got to do them over again because somebody else says, no, you're not doing it according to the rules. I think the rules should be rewritten in a very comprehensive way so that when anybody wants to do a project in the city of Annapolis, they know going in what the rules are going to be, and they can begin the process with full confidence that when they get to the end, the city's going to be able to accept the work they've done because it's going to follow the rules. We find experts, lawyers that know how to review those things, but I think it's critical that we do that because if we don't, we're going to continue to have the kinds of issues that we have before us now with the project in Eastport, with Crystal Springs, Providence Point, and ultimately the judges are going to be making land use decisions, which I said earlier, the decisions that we as elected office holders should be making.
Someone like to respond?
The city's done a number of things over my administration to make building easier for the average person. The first thing we did is we merged departments. I had a major reorganization of city government. We made it easier to get a permit. So if you're a small person that lives in a home and you want to replace a window, you used to have to get a permit for that. I introduced legislation that said anything under $500, you didn't have to help the average person. But what we're talking about, the rules not being clear, we're only talking about massive developments. And I think we have to understand the history of it. The zoning rules and laws are very clear when it comes to what you can do by right. Say you're allowed to do one house per acre. You have 10 acres. You can build 10 houses. What the Eastport Shopping Center and Crystal Spring are, these are special exceptions or planned unit developments. They're things that are outside of the zoning code. They're asking for more than you're legally allowed to have. So everything's a negotiation. And I think we should be tough negotiators and not just roll over. So is the process hard? Is it cumbersome? Absolutely. And I think that's one of the ways we can stop from overdevelopment. There are ways we can work together to make the process easier for the small person building. And I've been working with people in the development community to do that, and I'll continue to do so.
I think we have to take the subjectivity out of it. So we have city officials who are afraid to make decisions. They're afraid to make decisions because of what they believe are political ramifications. So when we make those rules clear, when we make it black and white, and a lot of things about things we don't like can be solved easily. Where our council says some of these things are out of their control. Well, it's completely in control of the council. If you don't like the density of a project or the density of the zoning, change the zoning. It's that simple. Just make that stuff happen. So we have to empower the people who work in the city. They're trained experts at what they do. And we have to let them make decisions, and I don't think they do that now.
An example of the code problems we have is the Eastport Land project, which I mentioned earlier, where for 2 or 3 years, this developer proceeded, and I understand that the developer has also a responsibility to know what they're doing. I'm sorry, the developer has a responsibility, but also the city has a responsibility to help guide these people. And here we have a developer who, according to them, spent $1 million on site planning and architects for a project, only to be told at the last minute, well, this isn't really going to work and we're not going to allow. That's just wrong. That doesn't mean they should get to build it, but it means they have a right to be angry with the city about having been told that 127 looked like the right number for 2 or 3 years, and now they're being told you have to go back and do more site planning and review and see whether it's even economically feasible. And it reinforces this impression people have that it's impossible to do business with Annapolis, with the city of Annapolis. And That's just, you see example after example of people not wanting to do business here and pulling out because they don't know what to expect from the city code and the city regulations.
Mr. Pantelides, you talked about how Crystal Springs, which is now Providence Point, what comes next. So I'm asking, what does come next?
I think that's up to the landowner to tell us what comes next to the project. The city, can you hear me? The city can't dictate what somebody does, what the plans they submit. But the one thing I will commit to is we need a master plan for this entire property. When you look at what happens on that property, they say we're just going to build Providence Point over here. There's still 66 acres that are left, and we're not sure what's going to happen with that. As part of the annexation agreement, they have to do a master plan with what comes next. Look, as mayor, we don't have the right to say you can only put up 50 townhomes or you should make it look this way. All we're here to do is say, what are the rules and hold them to the highest environmental standard, which is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure they do all stormwater management on site, and we're going to make sure they mitigate traffic appropriately. It affects me personally. I live in Hunt Meadow, right down the road from this project, and all projects in the city. I'm talking loud. I was done.
Transport plan.
Sounds much.
Want to use one of the other mics?
I was done.
Okay. Which brings to mind some of the pressures put on the infrastructure with these larger developments. It doesn't take much on Forest Drive for a tree to go down and traffic to be backed up for hours and hours on end. So I guess the question is how to deal with development and handle the infrastructure that clearly can't handle what's there now. It's open to anyone.
I'll take a stab at that. I had trouble getting here tonight, coming from downtown because of the traffic, and I think it doesn't matter where you are in the city, this traffic has become overwhelming. But it's my understanding that as we look at some of these projects, traffic has to be one of the issues that's considered as we look at the plan to ensure that you talk about the density, that's fine, but we also have to talk about the traffic and how these projects are going to affect intersections. I don't know if we're looking at the intersections now, the failure of intersections, Forest Drive, in my mind, rush hour is completely failed. If you try to get any place in a hurry in the morning or in the evening on Forest Drive, it's almost an impossibility. So as we look at infrastructure, certainly traffic planning consideration has to be a part of that.
Anyone else care to address that?
The timing of traffic matters, which is one of the discussions that's been had about the Providence Point project. Is initially it was planned as a mixed residential project, which would have had ordinary townhomes, where working people would live, and there was a concern about traffic and loaded on schools, and now it's been proposed as retirement / assisted living community, where people don't have to drive for rush hour, where there's maintenance staff, and housing care staff. We know they usually work a 6 to 2 or a 7 to 3 a.m. shift, or a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, and then there's a second shift. So by using intelligent timing of what these uses are for, I think we can alleviate a lot of concerns about traffic. We can also alleviate downtown traffic concerns by addressing our parking issues, especially by letting people know what spaces are available in what garages, which we can do by digital technology now, so they don't just know about looking for places to park. But right now, everybody just drives around looking for parking, but we live in the year 2017, not 1917. So we need to get some advances pushed through on that.
Mr. Pantelides, or Mr. Buckley, go ahead.
So I think we could be putting some pressure on developers to help us with some of this infrastructure. So I think on Forest Drive, the development should happen with very wide shoulders. We have areas that are wide enough for big bike paths. And those big bike paths could be designed to actually carry an emergency vehicle. Because when Forest Drive backs up, everywhere else is backed up as well. It's not just Forest Drive. When the Bay Bridge backs up, we deal with it on Forest Drive. So putting some pressure on the developers to help us with infrastructure should be a priority. I look at Eastport Landing and I say, There's an opportunity there to have that developer create some kind of parking where we can shuttle in to the peninsula. And that would be a great way to get people out of their cars. We've got to be getting people out of their cars. We've got to be investing in public transport. We don't have control of some of these roads. It's not like Forest Drive. That's a county road. We don't get to dictate exactly how that is expanded.
So everyone on the stage has echoed the same sentiment. Forest Drive is a concern. We haven't heard a plan about how we're going to fix it and what we're going to do to mitigate it. And I'd like to share with you my plan. The first plan is information. Knowledge is power, as we all know. We have to understand how many cars are coming down Forest Drive. And today we don't know that. How do we find out? We do a traffic study. But when do the developers do traffic studies? They do it in the middle of winter when no one's going down. They do it when quiet water's closed. We need to find out how they're doing it every day, and that's what we're doing. I teamed up with County Executive Steve Shue. We're now going to have cameras all along Forest Drive that will give us real-time data every single day. I came from a software company. I love data. How many cars are going by? We have to work better on syncing our lights. So if someone's coming in to make a left or right-hand turn, when can those go on and off? We also have to eventually figure out how much is too much. You know, we can only mitigate so much. At a certain point, you have to say no. You can't keep cramming everything in. To Mr. Young's point, I think we have used technology in a big way. In downtown, everybody in this room probably has a smartphone. You can pay with parking for your smartphone. And what he's talking about, finding how many spaces are open in each garage, that's coming down the road. The circulator bus runs on a 15-minute loop. People were tired. Said, you know what, I'm sick and tired of waiting outside for a bus. There's an app. Go download it right now in the App Store or Google Play to find out in real time where that bus is. So we've made substantial improvements in that, and I think I have the leadership to take us forward to the next level. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next area, I would remind you that we are looking for your questions for the second hour. Please remember to write it down. If you have a particular candidate you would like that question to be directed to, please note that, and then you would bring it forward and the committee will screen it. I can't take questions. If you have any questions, you can come ask up here.
No, it's not a question, it's the fact that each of the candidates needs to pick up the microphone so we can...
A little bit closer? Okay. So you have to kind of keep, there you go. Pull as close to you as you possibly can. Thank you. All right, our second topic area. We will, let me double check, I actually have my notes here. Community relations and policing. And we are not unique in that regard with what's going on out there. So let us pick up with, I believe, Mr. Buckley, and then we'll proceed and go back to Mr. Astle. So if you would like to address that issue or concern.
So, can you all hear me? Okay. So it's the most important issue that we face in the city. I just did a community event that got cops out of the car and got cops running through Police Street and through some of the areas in town that are not that are marginalised. So what we have is we need cops to be meeting kids outside of their uniforms. Sometimes if I'm in charge of the city, I will be making sure that the policemen have a couple of hours of time to coach kids' sports teams, to get involved in homework programs. I think that we need to call our policemen by their first names. We need to create those relations that used to happen in the old days. People used to know their local policemen. We should be incentivising development so that policemen and firemen and nurses can actually live in the communities that they serve. When policemen just come in to work here and then leave, it's very different to a policeman whose child goes to a school. And when you live here, you have access to information that you wouldn't have when you don't have relationships. So community policing is an important thing. When we talk about more cops and getting tough on crime, I say get better with relationships. I say that we need to pay our cops more so that we can get the best cops working in our community. I'd say when we're bringing on more policemen now, let's bring on one less policeman, but let's have better training programs for the policemen so that we can retrain them, because policing today is a lot different to what it used to be. And so they're the sorts of things that I would push for.
Pantelides.
Race relations to the police department, as you said, it's been an issue for a long time. probably will in the future as well. It's part of the world we live in. My administration has done a number of things to reach out and build it. The first thing we did is we started our community relations program. We made a change in leadership with the police chief, and we've implemented 16 new community initiatives to build trust with the community. People are getting out of their cars for a minimum of 45 minutes every day talking with people. And that number can be higher and will be higher. We also implemented a body camera program, which is something the community had asked for a long time. And that helps to build trust within the community. You know, we've had a number of complaints that haven't come forward because people have seen the body camera footage and said, I'm not going to make a complaint, I know it didn't happen. And the opposite is true as well. We've had some people that were caught doing misbehavior, and they were caught on body camera doing it. So those are two of the ways we're doing it. But more than that, we have to build trust on a networking basis. You know, I try to be in a different church every week talking with the community. I go door to door, whether it's in the housing authority, talking with voters. And in addition to the police department, seeing it outside of crime in that aspect, my administration's hired an African-American liaison and a Hispanic liaison to build trust with those communities. The work our police department does is the most important thing city government does. In the last budget, we hired 10 new police officers, and we funded our police department at record levels. Thank you.
It's no secret that there really are two Annapolis, as a term we hear quite often. Most of us, fortunately, don't encounter the police very often. You know, usually that, just like me being a lawyer, you don't have to come see me usually. And I can give you a forensic analysis, according to me, of how this happens, that community relations started to decline. When we, back before this incumbent mayor's term, when we hired a chief from Baltimore who decided to reach out to other people he knew from Baltimore, and they decided to laterally hire officers who aren't from our community and start bringing them in. And they come here and they patrol for a certain number of hours, and then they leave and they go back to Howard County or Baltimore County or Baltimore City or wherever they live. That wasn't the police force I saw and knew when I first came here. We need initiatives to hire, promote, and train local people. Because, you know, and I said this in one of the last forums, there's an old saying in law that a good lawyer is one who knows the law and a great lawyer is one who knows the judge. When we talk about policing, a good detective knows the procedures, but a great detective has sources. And I don't know how anyone thinks we're going to prevent crime and identify problems and focus on issues if we have a bunch of police officers who just see this as being where they work rather than where they live and where they know people and have connections and relationships. So it's not, I don't think that we need more police on the street. I think we need to focus on areas that are known to be trouble areas. We need to focus on community policing, and we need to focus on local recruitment, retention, and training. Thank you.
Okay, you know, a lot of people don't know this about my past, but I spent 6 years as a police officer in the city of Baltimore. While I wasn't working the street, I learned a lot about the police culture. And so I think some of those things can apply here. But let me tell you something I saw the other day. It gives me some pause. I was downtown and I saw an officer in a car sitting there across the street from Zachary's. So I went over and looked. I thought, well, maybe he's doing some paperwork. Well, he wasn't. He was just sitting there. So I said something to the chief a couple of days later about, Chief, you know, why wasn't that guy out his car on the street, mingling with people, letting the community know, the visitors know, we do have a police department here that cares. He said, well, you know, some of these older guys, they've developed habits, and it's really, we're trying to change it with the younger guys. And I thought, really? You, as chief, can't tell these guys to get out of their cars? So what the mayor said is right, 45 minutes out of a 12-hour shift, they got to be out of their cars. You can't develop a relationship with a community if you're locked up in your car with the windows up and your air conditioner on. So we have to get the officers that we have now out of their cars on the street so they can begin to develop the relationships. One of the ways police solve crimes in neighborhoods is they have sources. You heard Nevin say. They develop those sources by meeting with people, developing relationships, and out of that comes the ability to solve crimes in the communities that they're supposed to protect. We also need to ensure that we have officers that live here. I think that's another key thing. You can't live here, work here, and get in your car and drive to the Eastern Shore and have the sort of connection to this community that you really need to be effective as a law enforcement officer. Thanks.
You've mentioned couple of you, that city needs to do more to encourage officers to actually live in the community. So my question back to you is, how do you go about doing that?
You can incentivize development. So there can be bonuses for development projects that provide housing for police officers and nurses, firemen, all in the community. That can be put onto the development. The one thing I want to talk about, the most important thing, and it's the moral imperative that we have to deal with, is it's about our kids. And so we're not getting into the schools, and we have a situation that could happen in our schools, in our public school system now, where it reflects the prison system. We have Latino gangs, we have African American gangs, and we see white supremacy happen. We have to intersect children before things are too late. We are defunding rec centers in these communities. We need to refund those rec centers in those communities. We've taken sports out of the middle schools, and that used to be the thing that keeps our kids occupied. And then when kids are playing on the street and they have nothing to do and we have problems and we scratch our heads, well, it's because we didn't keep our kids busy. So the kids are the most important thing.
To add to what Gavin said, there was, during the very bottom of the housing market, Arundel County had a program it was a low-interest loan program to help with down payments of people below a certain income to buy a house. You could have a similar program for public servants who have an income below a certain level. There's a loan that gets paid back. There's interest on it, but it doesn't get, the principal doesn't get paid back until they either retire or they leave, or they have to do, or they move on, or whatever it is, or until a certain time passes. So that's another creative solution to try to incentivize officers who are already working in Annapolis to maybe decide to relocate here.
Especially, you also mentioned that in your remarks. You have the ideas to develop incentives to get officers to stay in the community?
Well, I think you do. Let me tell you, one of the things that people don't often realize about police officers is that it's expensive to recruit and train police officers. Before they go on the street to carry out their duties, they have to graduate from the Maryland Police Training Academy, Approved Academy. We don't have one in Annapolis, so we have to send our new officers to either the county, or when I went through the academy in Baltimore City, the Annapolis officers were going to school up there. So the city bears the expense of getting these officers trained up to the point that they can actually become sworn officers on the street. Well, then you want to keep them, because what happens is oftentimes if your incentives are not good enough, they'll take the experience that they gain and they'll go to another department someplace else in the state where they get more money and better benefits. And so I think that's something that we need to very carefully take a look at.
And you share that?
The city has a take-no-car policy. Talking with officers, that's one of the biggest concerns they have. Having a car that you can take home. If you live within the city of Annapolis, you can take home your car. But I have to tell you, police officers and firemen not living within the cities they serve is not unique to Annapolis. You could probably go to any jurisdiction in this entire state, and I would bet at least half of the people don't live within the communities they serve. We could do more for affordable housing. We could do more to get people, but people have to apply locally to join the force.
Our topic has to do with police and community relations. I'm curious, with all four of you, what do you think works with regard to police-community relations in the community, and what more needs to be done? I just throw it out there, you can just jump in.
Well, I'll start first. Policing, anything in life, it's about relationships. You have to develop and build relationships, and with those relationships comes a sense of trust. So if police officers aren't in the communities on a regular basis, building those relationships, developing that trust with the people that they're serving, then it's just not going to work. Now, there are some specific training programs that police officers can undertake to get some hands-on training before they begin to do these things in the community. But developing those relationships, I think, is the foundation of good policing. We talk about community policing. Well, it's community policing. The officers have to be in the communities, on their feet, meeting with people, talking with people, developing those relationships.
It's an imperative that we have diversity in the police force, I think. And so, people need to see people that look like them in these positions that are in charge. So we have to make sure that our police force and our fire department reflect the community.
On Monday night, I had the honor of swearing in 17 new firefighters. And Chief Stokes got up there, our fire chief, and said something. He said we're 33% diverse. He said I take those numbers against anyone else. If you compare the city's diversity rate to Anne Arundel County, we're far leading, not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of leadership positions. For community policing, yes, there's a lot we have to do, and we talked about it in depth. The real issue people may not want to talk about is the heroin and opioid epidemic. As they mentioned earlier, I'm on the governor's workforce board, our intervention team on this. We had a meeting this morning with the county executive and state's attorney. That's the issue that drives crime in this neighborhood. If you look at homicides, if you look at the crime, almost all of it is tied back to drugs and gang activity. So we can build relationships, and we're going to keep doing that. But the big issue is how we're fighting crimes and drugs in our community.
Other than just to say that I agree with the non-reactor.
All right.
Sue?
Yes.
Can I offer another observation?
Absolutely.
You know, at the General Assembly level, we're concerned about this opioid epidemic as well. One of the things we did in the last 2 years was create a program where if you're a physician, when you prescribe an opioid to a patient, you have to record that and send it into a website. And it's in that website. And you also have to have the patient's name and the number of pills that patient was prescribed. So that if that person goes to another physician and tries to get a second prescription, that physician looks at the website and they know that this person has already gotten an opioid drug, and so they're not going to get it, because if they do, this site is monitored, the state's going to come down, and these physicians risk losing their medical license if they violate this. We're trying to take some steps to make a difference, but it is an insidious problem that we're going to have to find a solution to.
I suspect we'll have a question or two in a second now. Our third area, which we'll move on to, and you touched on it to a degree, we want to take a look both at within the city and on a regional basis, transportation. What the challenges are, what your recommendations are, what's feasible, and what's pie in the sky. So I would ask Mr. Kennedy to get us off.
Thank you. Transportation issues are extremely important in the city. You know, if I ask the question, how many people took the bus to get here, raise your hand. I see 2 hands raised. Most of us drive our cars. And we're fortunate to be able to have that opportunity. But that's not the case for many people in Annapolis. Many people depend on the bus routes to get them places. You know, one of the reasons when I ran, something I saw, is that all the bus shelters were torn down in the city of Annapolis. We signed a bad contract, and when the vendor left, he took them all with him. I replaced all those bus shelters in the city of Annapolis. If you want people to take transportation, you have to make it easier for them. Also, we got more money from Arundel County for transportation. Look, we're a small city. We can't afford to do everything on our own. Put it in perspective. In the state of Maryland, there's 157 cities. Only 2 of them run their own transportation department, Annapolis and Ocean City. How are we going to pay for these issues? The one thing I did is I reached out to the county executive. I said, give me a list of all bus routes in the city of Annapolis that we run. And we found out something interesting. 42% of our bus routes weren't in Arundel County, the mall, the high school, everything else. So we worked with them. We got an increase from $250,000 to $500,000 to $750,000 to pay for this. Also, we worked with the state of Maryland. You know, if you look at the buses now, for the first time in a very long time, there's a bus route from Annapolis to Baltimore that the state runs. There's also one from the Eastern Shore to Annapolis to Baltimore and back forward. So you've seen during my administration, I can reach out, I can build partnerships with people to improve transportation in the city. I mentioned the circulator earlier, having a mobile app. I plan to do that for the other bus routes as well. We've introduced electronic fare box meters. You know, how many people have exact change? Now you can pay with credit cards and everything else. We translated some of our documents into Spanish so we get more people using our system. So I understand people have a need for transportation. I've done a lot, and I'll continue to build on that.
Mr. Young?
Sure. I think buses are important, circulator programs are important. But we also have to understand, and I like buses, I like bicycles. I lived in Boston for 5 years. I rode a bike almost everywhere I went. And I rode to Boston. It's a little freezing usually. But I also know as a practical matter, some people are very resistant or they're not physically able, they don't have the mobility to use some of the public resources that are available to them. I also know that people come downtown to shop, they're from an area, when we're talking about our tourist trade, they're from an area where they can't easily access public transportation. On the other end, we have to accommodate them too. So we are still going to have to address, people would like to say in transportation circles, we can replace everything with buses and bicycles and shuttles and trolleys. We're still going to have to address our parking issues. We still have to address parking and traffic downtown if we want to increase the tourist rate downtown, which is really, to be frank, at least indirectly, it is really the major economic engine for the city right now. So yes to having public transportation work longer hours and work better, but we also have to address parking. Or we are not going to see much economic growth downtown.
Okay. Public transportation is a critical element in our entire society. Let me say that one of the things that I've learned as a member of the General Assembly is that public transportation buses don't make it on the fare box. And so you're always going to have to find a way to subsidize that transportation and make sure it works. Now here in the city, we're a little bit limited in our ability to do that, but if you want to talk about jobs, there's a direct relationship between public transportation and jobs. If you live over in some of those projects off of Forest Drive, and you have a job downtown, if you don't have public transportation, you're not going to get to those jobs. So it's a critical element in trying to ensure that the people in our community are going to be able to hold jobs, they're going to be able to get jobs, and they're going to have the ability to get to those jobs. The Maryland Transit Administration, I would tell you, the bus from Baltimore through community college to the city of Annapolis has been going on for a long time. Long before this administration or the last administration or the administration before that. It's an ongoing effort that I've supported as a member of the General Assembly. So that I'll pass it on to Gavin.
So we need to destigmatize public transport. And so a lot of people feel it's beneath it, but we need to make it more relevant, a bit sexier. I have some local transportation ideas. One is called the Crosstown Flyer, one is called the East-West Flyer. They're open-air trolleys. They get people out of their cars at the top of Main Street, not at the bottom of Main Street. We have a lot of parking in this city, it's just not on the water. And everybody comes to Annapolis and tries to park on the water, and when they can't get a parking space on the water, they circle around and cause gridlock on the Eastport Bridge, they cause gridlock at Gate 1. So we need to be getting people out of their cars as soon as possible. We also, this flyer idea that I have also, to make them fly, you have to give them dedicated trolley lanes on a percentage of the route, or you can make those dedicated trolley lanes just dedicated to bikes and trolleys. Now, how many of you came here tonight on a bike? I just want to say that. We need to be connected our bike routes. Because that's the way to get to a job. You should be able to get on a bike and ride to the mall. We should extend our bike path on the Poplar Trail all the way to the mall, and then figure a way to circle it around to the Pearl Town Centre. People should be able to get on their bikes and ride safely to the community college. When you connect these things properly, when you do these things properly for your city, they're not only a way to move around town, a way to stop us burning fossil fuels, get us out of our cars, but they're also a thing that increases the value of our properties, and they become an amenity for the city, so we should make them a priority.
I would follow up by saying some of these things would come with a price tag. As it's already been pointed out with the buses, generally don't pay for themselves at the fare box. So then I go back to all of you. How do you go about raising the money to get these things done?
Well, Steve Shue wants to give us some of that project open space money, so I know he's dying to give it back to us, so we can pay with some bike routes with that. We could also, so that's, I joke about that, but we definitely could do that. What was the rest of the question?
It's a question of how do you pay for these projects. I think plans which you present provide solutions, but in order to do that, we need the funds to get it done.
So just for the two things, so bike routes, I think we can get funds like that. We can get federal transportation funds for the trolley that are available to us. We do not seek out all the grants that are out there. If I'm mayor, I'll have a team of grant writers that make sure that no grant gets unturned. So we can find money to buy local transportation routes like the Crosstown Flyer and the East-West Flyer. And then the way we don't put a city employee in that, we run that as a concession. So we let somebody run the concession of the trolley for 2 years. You can make, and it works on a tip system. So the tip system is a tube that goes through the trolley, and like when you go to the bank, you can open up a little piece of that tube, you can put $1 in, and the dollar flies to the front of the trolley, and the kids ask their dad for another $1. And so it works on a tip system. You can make $50 to $500 on a good weekend. So it would make a small business for somebody. So that's the way I would play for those two small ideas.
One thing we could do is we could set up a toll booth on Forest Drive. That was a joke, but I'm sure Steve Chu is he here somewhere now? They're on the phone already. But that was also a joke, now a philosophical inquiry that we should engage in. I'm going to ask a question like buses and bikes. How many of you came here on a public roadway today?
A public roadway.
On a public roadway. And on that trip, how many of you paid a toll to use that public roadway that you used tonight? Okay, when we start saying every government service should pay for itself, we say, oh, well, how are these buses going to pay for themselves? How are these bike paths going to pay for themselves? Well, sometimes we hear, well, that bridge should pay for itself, like we have the Bay Bridge, and we mentioned this, the mayor and I were at the Capitol Editorial Board today, and we were talking about this, and I said, I've never understood why they tell you you've got to pay a toll to use the Bay Bridge, when it's just as much a public roadway and a public amenity that we pay, or should be paid for out of tax revenues as the rest of our roads. I've never understood it. I've never said or seen why, because something in particular is expensive, even though it's useful to a large number of populace, why they say, well, they should pay, the bus people should pay, the train people should pay, but drivers should be paying. Why? Because it's a democracy and the drivers outnumber the bus riders and the train riders. That's not necessarily the best public policy, even if it's the most popular approach. So let's think about what we can do to help out everyone without necessarily saying, because I don't use it, it should pay for itself instead of being paid for by the public.
But let me address the issue of tolls. There are some places in Maryland, there's some roadways that have a toll associated. The east-west thing in Montgomery County, the Bay Bridge, 95 as you go from Baltimore north, those are toll roads. The reason is that they were built by the Maryland Transportation Authority, and the Transportation Authority sold bonds to get the money to do that. It didn't come out of the Transportation Trust Fund, which is where the money to do other roadway projects comes from. The Transportation Trust Fund is funded by the gasoline tax, and so that's the money that goes to provide for the maintenance and the building of those other public roads. Now, I will tell you that some of the roads in Annapolis are state roads. The city doesn't own all the paved public roads in the city. And so I think there's a relationship that we could work with the state. There's an entity that I helped create called the Capital Cities Commission, which affords the opportunity for the mayor, the superintendent of the Naval Academy, the county executive, and the governor to sit down and address some of these issues that affect the capital city. We are the capital city of Maryland, and we have issues that are unique to us that really need to be addressed. So with regard to transportation, the buses, we're going to have to find the money inside our own budget in order to do that. And I'll also, I heard the green open space money. We got to be very careful about how we spend open space money. There's some pretty strict criteria about what you can do with that money and what you can't. So, thanks.
So there's a number of ways we can pay for these. As I mentioned earlier, the bus shelters. Those were taken down under a bad contract. Those have all been put back up. We're making advertising money. If you look at the city bus, pay attention the next time you go out. You'll see them wrapped, whether it's Pandora Jewelry or McDonald's. We have more advertising on buses. But the biggest thing we can do to make money is get more people to use the bus. There's something basic about economics you have to understand on a bus. You're paying the driver the same cost if there's one person or 20 people. Paying the same insurance, you're paying the same gas, and the bus costs the same. The only variable is how many people are on there. And we need to encourage more people to come by and use public transportation. That's why I put in the documents in Spanish, trying to encourage people to come out. It's going to make a difference. But some of the things like a trolley downtown, that's going to be very expensive. And the federal government is very limited on what money they give you to build new routes.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is now we'll start to shift, and if we can have some of the questions from folks in the audience. If you have, again, any questions you would like to ask, be certain to write them down, mention, note on the card or a piece of paper to whom you'd like to have that question addressed, or whether you'd like all four of our candidates to do that, and we will start to have them address them. If there are some questions you can pass along. All right, this is for all. It has to do with infrastructure improvement. Besides addressing traffic flows, what other infrastructure improvement is your top priority?
I'd like to start off on this one if we could. Infrastructure has been one of the bedrocks of my administration. If you look at roads and sidewalks, we've invested more money than ever before. You know, this is an old city. We've got 300 years of history and culture. That also means we have 300 years of broken pipes and infrastructure on the road. If you look at what we've done, we've taken under the most ambitious public infrastructure project during my 10 years as mayor. Number one, we started and we're almost completed the construction of the Annapolis water treatment plant. It was built in 1929. It was basically held together in certain parts with duct tape. That was a $40 million project. We've also rebuilt the bulkhead downtown. All the concrete around Eagle Island. I was shocked when I came in to look at it at low tide. The concrete was gone. You can just see metal rebar sitting there. We rebuilt that bulkhead downtown. And not only did we rebuild it on schedule and $1 million under budget. Next year, we're starting off in February the reconstruction of Main Street. We're not just redoing Main Street. We're going to hook it up for high-capacity water flow so people can use the second stories of their homes. We're also going to take a look at the Hillman Garage in the next 5 years. We laid out a plan. We have to do the bulkhead first, Main Street, then the Hillman Garage. In addition to that, I can go back and give all the numbers about the increased money we put in the road and sidewalks. Now, I know going around downtown. I was in Ward 1 the other day, and the first thing I said knocking on the door is, look at my sidewalk. And I said, yes, I understand. I'm not going to guarantee I'll get it done next year, but I guarantee you we will get it done. So we put more money in it, and we'll continue to do so.
Anyone else here to address it?
I think definitely the number one infrastructure project we need is the one that will stop the city dock from flooding. If we're underwater, we can't really enjoy our infrastructure. There's also been proposals, which I think are meritorious proposals, to start to create, once we can address our parking woes, to start to create some green space at the city dock. And then there's the Hillman Garage, which I'm told the engineers say is pretty much near the end of its life. I don't know if that means it falls down on you while you're on the second floor, but engineers will say something's at the end of its life, and then they'll tell you it'll last another 50 years too. So, kind of like economists and politicians. But we need to do something about the Hillman Garage and stop the flooding downtown first and foremost.
I think the mayor touched on one of the issues that I think is really important. That's the water infrastructure on Main Street. But that water delivery system goes a lot beyond Main Street. All of us in the downtown area are reliant on pipes that in many cases are almost 100 years old. And the same applies to the sewer system as well. And I think as we begin to look at these kinds of things, they're out of sight, they're out of mind, you don't see them until you have a problem. And suddenly you got a sewage leak someplace that you got to repair, or you got a broken water main that's bubbling up through the street. So those are two areas that I think we really need to look at. Now the mayor mentioned the high pressure lines on Main Street. A couple years ago in another administration, I tried to do a project because I wanted to see an increase in density and population downtown. And so I came to the city with a plan that we were going to create a low interest revolving loan that these business owners could access, and then to do the sprinkling of their buildings so that the upper floors would have sprinkler systems. And so this fund would come out of the state, but I couldn't get the city to take any interest in it, so eventually it fell apart. But as we look at infrastructure, there's some other things that we need to take into consideration as well.
So you only have to look at Houston and Florida and what just happened to realize, how close we are to a disaster. So I think that obviously the number one thing is what do we do about flooding, and I think we're not thinking big enough. I think we should have a contest an international contest on what we can do to solve our problems. I think we need to look at the Netherlands and countries like that have been dealing with mass quantities of water and how they solve their problems. We blow up a few barriers and do a couple of things downtown, and I don't think that the program is broad enough, because it doesn't look like we have the capacity to solve it through those solutions. I think we're not thinking big enough. I'm a big believer in community space or public space. We need to build better parks and better green space. We don't have a blade of grass at City Dock. I don't think that should be just a big catchment area for stormwater that rolls right into Spa Creek. Thank you.
Sure.
So on the issue, what Mr. Astle was talking about, in regards to utilizing the upper story, the city of Annapolis actually applied for a grant. Something that they had done in Cumberland, exactly that. So next year I hope to be working with you, depending how the election works out, doing that on flooding. That wasn't a joke, but on flooding and sea level rise. You know, when I came into office, we had gone to the legislature and we asked them for $1 million to do an engineering study on how we're going to address this problem. I sat down with my department head and said, look, I grew up here. Flooding is all over the place, right? What are we doing to fix it? There was no plan. There was no vision. There was no leadership on it. I didn't get the money from the legislature. But what I did do is go to Governor Larry Hogan, who gave us $1 million to study it. And we're implementing that plan right now to study it. I also went door to door, and we're applying for a $3 million federal grant to go forward on how we're going to fix this. We talked to business owners. I said, I need to hear from you. How is this affecting you on a day-to-day basis? Right? And to get back and put that information to the government. We have an almost award-winning Weather Together program on how we're addressing sea level rise and climate change. And we're partnering with the Naval Academy on that. So those are just 4 things I've done in 4 years as mayor. And I think this is an important issue. And I'd like to ask Senator Astle, if he's been in office for 30 years, if he could list us a number of things he's done to help fix the city of Annapolis. 30 years? I want to hear 30 things.
I've done so many things that I can't even remember all of them. This is my community as well as yours, and as a member of the General Assembly, I felt the responsibility to do what I could to help my city. But oftentimes, I need the cooperation of the city in order to get some of those things done, and I've not always had that sort of cooperation with previous administrations.
Moving on to the matter of affordable housing, and this again is open to anyone who care to answer it. How do you propose to get a more affordable range of housing downtown to make it a diverse income community?
So I would like to answer that. So I just left before this debate. We just did a cookout in Robinwood, and you can see how these communities have been neglected. And so we want to ask why we have problems in the city. We have problems in these communities because we haven't funded them, and people who live there think no one cares about them. So it is an imperative, one of the most important things that we can do to come up with a solution for our public housing. Well, you have to invest in it. My mum lives in public housing in Australia. You can get it right. We've got it right in this city. We've got it right at Bloomsbury Square. We've got it right in Annapolis Gardens. But we are not working hard enough to get the other neighbourhoods, giving the other neighbourhoods help. So I just spent a day in about a month ago in Baltimore at a project called Uplands. And this project was, the city found a private-public partnership to make this development happen. They took 100 acres of blighted Section 8 housing and they knocked it down, and then they rebuilt some of the Section 8 rentals. They rebuilt some community centres, bike paths, and then they built some properties that you could actually purchase. And they had programs in those properties where you could, and the prices were reasonable. There was $120,000 properties, $150,000 properties, $220,000 properties. And in 5 years, they'd only had one person drop out of that program. If you look at what people are paying in some of them, we think that it's cheap to live in public housing. It's not cheap. I just did a cookout yesterday at Woodside. They're paying $1,700 a month to live there. That's the same price as you pay in any other community. So we have to think of ways to help people move up the chain. And it's not for everyone. I'm not saying home ownership is for everyone. but that program only had one person drop out in 5 years. There is an appetite. People want the American dream, so we need to be able to give it to them.
Anybody else here to address? I might mention again that it says, the specific question was, how do you propose to get a more affordable range of housing downtown to make it a more diverse income community?
One of the things that is often puzzled me about is people say, well, how do we make housing more affordable? But they never look at the other side of the equation, which is how do we get people to make more money? To have more income. One thing in the long run that we can do is we can start focusing on education and recreational opportunities that will keep people out of trouble and will get them to the point where they're able to make more money than it takes to live in some place that they can't afford. It's a catch-22 of the question because the city, as we've seen, is very resistant to development. And this is a supply and demand thing. One of the things you'll learn about me if you ever talk to me for any amount of time is I believe in markets and I believe in supply and demand. And this is a supply and demand question. The question really is, how are you going to increase supply of housing downtown? And do it while working with the city government that seems to be very resistant to any sort of development in the historic district. The only answers that you can see presently are to develop some of the upper stories, the second and third floors of some of the buildings that are not presently inhabited, but a lot of those have obstacles because of sprinklers. And you can't turn what's empty space and get an occupancy or a rental license without having sprinklers now. So the answer I hear from some people is, well, just make them pay it, make them do it. Well, that's not the way our society works. It has to be worthwhile to the property owner to do it, or the government has to pay for it. The question is, do you all want to pay to make it affordable for people who live downtown when many of you all didn't buy downtown? Can I ask you why? Because you said, I'd rather spend my money and get more house or better living in Eastport or in off of Sparrow or in West Annapolis so it's a tricky question, but the question is,
What's your definition of downtown?
Well, I'm defining downtown.
Thank you. We're limiting our questions just to those up here.
I'll just say I'm defining it as a historic district and the area generally around the historic district by a small margin. And so the question really is asking it's asking the candidates come up with a solution where nobody really wants to hear the answer. That somebody has to pay for it, or you have to make downtown a less desirable place to live.
Anyone else?
So it's a question about the downtown Port One part. Is that what we're specifically?
It simply is, how do you propose to get a more affordable range of housing downtown to make it
downtown
more diverse?
Well, Nevin, I bought a house downtown on Fleet Street, so I live right in the middle of everything. So I see this problem, and it's got a couple of aspects to it. One, we've got some houses in my neighborhood that have people fixed them up and they turn them into Airbnb short-term rentals. They're not doing anything for the neighborhood. They're not providing any sort of housing for anybody. They're just selling them on weekends to people who are a detriment to our neighborhood. I've got 3 other houses that are abandoned, completely and totally abandoned. One of them, the city's taking the owner to court tomorrow on a what's that thing, Nevin, where you abuse the judge or whatever, I don't know. But the judge issued an order that this person couldn't live in this house. She says there's no electricity, there's no water, and she's living in this house and the back of it's rotting out, and the engineers in the city said it's uninhabitable. So we're not willing to force people that have these kinds of properties into doing what's necessary to get them back up to so that somebody can live in it. There's another one across the street. Somebody finally bought the house. It's been vacant for about a year and a half. He got a stop work order because he's doing the work without a permit. And now we discover he's coming at night and doing the work in the house at night with a stop work on the front. So I called the city, but those are the kinds of things. The city has to really take a careful look at these properties. We have in the downtown a number of rentals, and if we could fix these rentals up, I think for young people, young professionals that come here, we could find an affordable way for them to get started living in Annapolis.
Follow up in a sort of related way. This has to do with the fact that lots of focus has been on improving downtown. This is before we start our discussion. What plans do you have for improving the economy and quality of life for the rest of Annapolis?
One of the things that I think the city needs to do is when we talk about development, we do need to focus on development that we think will bring permanent jobs, not just construction jobs. That means development such as the Providence Point development, such as businesses, residential, not residential, restaurant businesses. A restaurant, here's the thing, and I've heard other candidates badmouth our downtown restaurants and bars and say, well, it shouldn't be all about the bars, and I understand people get tired of that. We've got probably 75 bars in Eastport and downtown. But there's no business I know of that can employ more people in that square footage. There might be one, but certainly isn't an antique shop or a t-shirt shop that does that employs that many people and brings in that much revenue to the city. So we really need to focus, if we're going to help the rest of the city, we need to focus on business development, and we need to focus on education for everyone. Again, for the entire city, not just for Ward 1.
Mr. Pantelides?
So the question about protecting quality of life for people in other wards, I think there's issues that affect us all no matter where you live. One of them will be the service you get from our fire department. And I'm proud to say that under my administration, our fire department got upgraded to a Class 1. And there's only 2 in the entire state of Maryland that have that distinction. Annapolis is one of them. You may have received a letter from my office which says you're eligible for reduction in your fire insurance rates. Some people got it, some people didn't. But it's a commitment we had to put public safety and your quality of life first. Other issues are the environment. Because again, I mentioned I was endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters. We've done a couple of things to protect the environment. Number one, we realized the fee we have doesn't bring in enough money. So I took a leadership role. We put $1 million in our stormwater fund solely for projects to go forward. We also, for the first time in the city's history, used Project Open Space money. Development nobody talks about anymore is a preserved parkside. And the city bought 22 lots that were slated for development in priority forest, took it off of the development rolls to protect our quality of life. When it comes to jobs in the economy, we have to help everyone out. I was very fortunate Governor Larry Hogan appointed me to the Workforce Development Board, and I served on the Cybersecurity Task Force. And those jobs are easy to come by. If you have a top secret clearance or even a normal clearance and a computer science degree, you can make 6 figures tomorrow. There's jobs everywhere. But what do we do for people that don't have that education or experience? Tomorrow morning, if you know somebody, at the Pitt Boyer Rec Center, the city's hosting the first ever Second Chance Job Fair. For people that have a criminal record, we've worked with companies to get them to come in here. The city's offering some jobs in our public works department to give people a second chance. It's a program that existed about a decade ago. We've also hosted job fairs for Maryland Live, for the solar energy park we're building, and we've had a maritime summit. So a very diverse economy. And my job as mayor is to work and connect with people in industries and get there. So bringing jobs, protecting the environment, and making sure people have good public service is how I'm protecting quality of life.
Anybody else wish to address that?
So, the best solution to crime is a job. Now, West Street, when we started, it wasn't a place that people thought was a great place to hang out. There was an open drug market, there was prostitution. We brought economic vitality to that street. Today there are less vacancies on West Street than there are on Main Street. And I asked the question, what is wrong when the main artery of the state capital can't support what only seems to be just t-shirt shops and bars? And I say we have to start to reinvent our downtown. We have to start to think of new ideas to bring vitality to the city. When banks can't survive on Main Street, we have to ask a question, because banks are rich, right? So I can say firsthand that I've taken vacant buildings, rundown restaurants, and I've turned them around and I've created over 150 jobs. I have paid over $500,000 in combined taxes a year through businesses that weren't there when I started. I know how to make things happen. I know how to create economic vitality, and I know how to bring a new energy to the city.
I think the question was really about the rest of Annapolis. And I think there are a couple of things that we need to take into consideration when we look at this. Housing is one. People don't have an adequate place to live, and that's not going to be a quality of life for them. The infrastructure we talked about. You know, parole has great potential for the future. I don't know how many of you walked or driven through the neighborhoods of parole, but that neighborhood has some real future, and I think that we need to work towards dealing with that. The issue of jobs, the city needs to go out and encourage jobs, companies, businesses to locate here in Annapolis. Now, right now, our business development person is in the county office. They're not. She's not working out of the city. It's a kind of a, you know, that's they're joined up. I'm not sure that that's going to work effectively for the city. We need to be trying to recruit our own businesses and trying to bring them here. But it takes leadership in the front, and we've got to work together, all of us.
This is a question, again, for all four of you, whoever would like to answer it. Do you support Annapolis as a sanctuary city?
Sanctuary city. I'll start off with it and say no, I don't support it. And I think we have to describe what a sanctuary city is, because there's so many things going on at the federal level right now. People have a misconception about the deportation of children or about not letting anyone else in. Sanctuary city is very simple. It's very simple and straightforward. It says that the Annapolis Police Department cannot cooperate with the federal government for a Class 1 offense. Those are murder, rapes, high-level ones. I don't support that. I don't think we should tie our police department hands. That doesn't mean I'm for kicking out everyone. It just means our police officers should be able to work with the federal government if they're addressing a violent crime.
Anyone else?
All I would say is, my concern when I hear that is, obviously, as a lawyer, I put the rule of law above all else. What we don't want is for the local authorities to reject cooperation with the federal authorities when that might be rise to the level of obstruction of justice or obstructing the federal law. That being said, our local law enforcement officers are not necessarily trained or equipped to determine the immigration status of anyone they encounter. Just because somebody speaks Spanish and doesn't have ID with them does not mean they should be detained and held until they figure out if he's a citizen. I've never in my life, been held by the police because they thought I might not be a citizen, right? So what we don't want is a situation like what arose in Arizona, where people are being picked up because of their race or their native language and being held, detained until they figured out whether they were citizens or not. That is not something we want in Annapolis. And we also don't want that because we don't want to discourage, especially the Latino community in Annapolis, from reporting crimes and cooperating with the police if something happens. So.
I think Nevin really touched on what I think is the nexus of this. Our police officers are trained to be local law enforcement officers. The Maryland Police Training Commission that they have to graduate from talks specifically about laws as they apply here in Maryland. What we're talking about here is where you've got these agents of the federal government, the ICE guys. I mean, that's kind of an interesting name for those agents, but they have specific training and rules that they have to abide by as well. So I think that when you try to get the two agencies doing the same job, that's a problem. Now, I agree that local law enforcement should cooperate with the feds on certain issues where they have information on crimes and information on people, they can pass it on. But to actually make arrests and detentions, I think is not a good thing.
Can I clarify that? Because I think people are going around the point. Sanctuary city is very simple. It doesn't mean Annapolis police officers detain anyone. It doesn't mean they perform immigration status. If someone's been arrested for a crime and they run a background check on them, and it says they're not legally a citizen, that's when it takes place. And I think we deserve a yes or no answer, because they had this legislation at the state level, and Senator Astle, unless I'm mistaken, you supported Maryland becoming a sanctuary state.
I supported the Trust Act, yes.
This is another question. We currently have gangs in our middle schools. What are your ideas for addressing the problem and working on solutions with the county?
So if you go through a number of our public housing areas, you'll see that the community centres in a lot of these areas have been defunded. And that's that simple. We have to have things that occupy our kids. My kids go to public school. Like I've got a 12-year-old now, 13-year-old just turned 13, and I see his buddies' Snapchat things. I see kids going in different directions, and it's because we're not occupying. So we have to make sure that there is things for kids to do in these community centres. We have to make sure, we have to rethink them and make them relevant to kids today, because it has to be something that a kid wants to go to, like sound studios or different kinds of skill training, different kinds of apprenticeships. I don't think college is for everybody, and I think that we moved away from that kind of that system. We expect everybody to go to college. Well, I can tell you how much I pay for a plumber in my restaurant and how much I pay for an electrician or a mechanical guy. I need those guys. I need kids with those sorts of trainings, and with kids being occupied, bad things don't happen.
Education is another critical element in this solution, I think. And one of the problems is that the city and the mayor don't have the ability to directly influence education. The Board of Education does that. But the mayor and the city can serve as a cheerleader to try to encourage and urge the county school system to provide the kinds of services in our schools that our children need. In some of these neighborhoods, these after-school programs could take place in schools, and the schools could take part in making this happen. But it's not going to happen unless we, as a group, begin to put pressure on them.
One of the things I heard mentioned, I was just thinking about this, one of the things I heard mentioned in one of the earlier boards was, for example, at that time, the Mayoral Rec Center closed at 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. I guess nobody wants to work those hours. I wouldn't either. I'm not young anymore. I'd rather be home. But if we're going to sort of, whether it's still true or not, I don't know. That was 6 months ago. But if we're going to start a community and we try to keep young people out of trouble and do something, then we need to actually make opportunities available, recreational and vocational and educational opportunities available. We could expand on the summer jobs program that's already been started. There are federal programs, TRIO programs that try to do more youth who might be at risk. The other thing is, and the time is coming, Annapolis and politicians in Annapolis have really ignored the Latino community, mostly because of, I think, a perception that some of them are here illegally and won't vote. I think that when you get right down to the bare bones of it, and I don't know how much statistically that is true, but I've been here for quite a while. I've talked to a lot of people who have that perception. But we need to ask ourselves, how many Latino police officers do we have in this community who grew up in communities locally, who know people, who can go talk to people, find out what's going on? Because without local connections, as a law enforcement officer, you are just shaking a tree and trying to see what drops out of it. And that's the way the resentment is created rather than results.
Just real quick on the job front, I think if you give kids a job and show them a path to success, it'll make a big difference. I mentioned earlier about the cybersecurity task force I serve on. If you went to kids today, the ones that are dealing drugs, it's basically a minimum wage job. Anyone who's involved in it, you don't make that much money, it's dangerous. But if you go to a kid and say, look, if you go to college, graduate with a job in computer science, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we'll make 6 figures. And most of them will make it by the time they're 25 years old. So showing people there's another opportunity, things to do. We did a maritime job summit. There's over 3,000 people employed in the maritime industry, and they're dying for work. Mechanics, people to paint, these are high-paying jobs. Why? Because everyone's retiring. So showing kids other opportunity for jobs is so important. Being active and engaged in their life as well. But the community has to step up as well, the parents and everyone. Say it takes a village to raise a child, so there's more work to be done. I think we're doing it.
And I had another thought. One of the issues the mayor just mentioned about the jobs in Fort Meade, the computer jobs, the security jobs require clearance. One of the problems that we're facing now at Fort Meade and Aberdeen is that it's difficult to get the clearances. These young people have taken life choices which took them out of the clearance process. They will never get clearance. So to combat that, we now have a program. It's here in Anne Arundel County, it's in Harford County, Aberdeen, where at the elementary school level, the junior high school level, and the high school level, a group comes and talks to the students and explains to them about these life choices, that if you do drugs, then don't ever think you're going to get a clearance, because it just won't happen. If you do some of these other kinds of criminal activities, don't think you'll ever get clearance, because you just won't. And so you have to make these kids understand that as part of what they're doing in school, they've got to make the right life choices, or their lives are not going to go anywhere anyway, regardless of their degrees.
This question is directed to Mr. Buckley, although it notes that everybody is welcome to respond. You've spoken about wanting to encourage responsible development, and a major part of your platform is the revitalization of Main Street downtown. In support of that effort, what steps will you take to ensure that lower-income families and communities aren't pushed out of their homes as the city gentrifies?
I speak about downtown, but I speak about the necessity of public housing. So I'm on the record saying we have to invest in it. So not just public housing, but mixed income housing. So we just sold the rec center a little while ago. It's going to become $1 million condos, $10 million condos. I don't think that we should become a city of just $1 million houses. We have to have affordable housing for, like I said, teachers and policemen and firemen. And you can do that because you can incentivize development that way. There can be bonuses given to developers for doing things like that. We're not making it easy for developers to build things like studios. And studios are a good way for our kids to get into the market. I want my kid to be able to afford a house here. What happens in this town is our kids leave us, and they think that they're never going to be able to afford a house in this city, so why bother? We have to make that a priority as parents. So I will be pushing for those initiatives. I think that we can't be a great community until we make a great community for everyone. I believe West Street's success has been because it's been diverse, because it's for young people and old people, it's for all ages and all races. We are very inclusive. And I think this town is not inclusive, and it needs to be better. And I don't think everybody feels welcome downtown, and we need to make people feel welcome downtown. We need to be doing things to encourage families to go downtown as well.
This gentrification issue and affordable housing, I see it in two ways. First of all, with developers, you can negotiate when they're going to do a housing project or they're going to do a project of condominiums. You can negotiate to ensure that as a part of that project, they're going to have some units that will actually have a lower price tag so that people can afford it. But with gentrification, I watched it happen in my neighborhood. I bought on Fleet Street 46 years ago, and I've seen it change. So if somebody buys one of these old houses and puts their own money into fixing it up, people call that gentrification. But I don't know how you stop that. They're meeting all the code requirements, they're putting their money into these homes, and then at some point they're going to sell these homes and make a profit from them. So I don't know how, as a government, you can stop that from happening.
Next question. Again, open to all the candidates. The mayor is a full-time job. How will you commit to working as a full-time mayor's position with your current job?
I wouldn't. I don't think any of the candidates would confident themselves. I would simply have to mind up my own practice and withdraw from the house.
I think I can skip it. What you say it is a full-time job, working 50, 60 hours a week every single week. I love it. It's a dream job and a lot of hard work.
I'll do what Jimmy Carter did, what Ronald Reagan did. I'll put my businesses into a blind trust. President Trump is the only person that has not followed that procedure. So I'm sure in Little Annapolis we can solve that. So I will be out of my restaurants. I'll be in City Hall. I'll be walking up Main Street and walking through communities every day like I do nowadays. I see John 3 mornings a week when I run from City Dot Coffee at 6 a.m. So I will be a full-time guy, and I'll love it.
If I'm successful in this election, I'll retire from the Senate and I'll be fully unemployed. And so I have retired, I guess is a better term. And so I have the time to devote full-time to the responsibilities of the office.
This next question doesn't have anyone specifically mentioned, but I think Mary probably answered it first. Why are there increasing numbers of vacant storefronts in downtown, and what can be done about it?
So when you look at the storefronts downtown, one of the main issues is cost to rent a building down there. And the government has absolutely no control over what someone charges for it. If someone wants to charge $10,000 a year, 50 or 100, the government can't come in there and make them do something different. There's a lot of landlords out there, I don't want to use the word greedy, but let's just say have high expectations. They would rather let it sit vacant. Are there things you can do to incentivize it? There are some things you can do. But I do want to talk about, when we talk about vacancies, I think there's just misperception about Main Street. You know, you mentioned it's all t-shirt shops and there's this huge vacancy rate. 95% of the buildings on Main Street are occupied. That means it's only 5% are unoccupied. I put those numbers up against anything. People say there's t-shirt shops everywhere. There's only 4 t-shirt shops in downtown Annapolis. There's also 4 sushi restaurants. What does that tell you? The market demands it. You know, people love sushi. Gavin and I had lunch the other day at Lemongrass. Great restaurant, Tsunami, one of the best sushi places in town. People demand it. The reason there's not 10 t-shirt shops, the market doesn't demand it, and the reason there's more than one, that's what the market demands.
I think you have to put yourself in the landlord's place. Landlords usually are good business people, and they're intelligent, so why would they let a place sit empty when you generate rent every month? Well, a couple of reasons. One, they might have a realistic expectation that somebody will rent at that price. 2, they're looking for a stable tenant, because one thing about most commercial leases that people may not know is oftentimes they have to do, when somebody moves in, a major build out. They change the interior, they put in fixtures, they change the floors, they change, all sorts of things inside the building. And if a tenant comes in and basically, and I will say ruins, in quotes, and scare quotes, your building for you, and 3 months later they fold up and go out of business and say this is a bad idea, and we're down the road. You as a landlord now have a building that's been altered. You've lost out on your rights. You've lost out on the opportunity of getting a more stable, better tenant in the building. The city still gets property tax on that building, whether there's rent coming in or not. So to attribute this to some kind of grand conspiracy when it's simply market forces, I think is just wrong. I think we're talking here about market forces and landlords not wanting to rent to a bad tenant who's going to be a headache and devalue the property and leave them home bad. That's all.
You have to create the road, right? So what we have in our city is we have to move away from, I'm a preservationist. Why we love this town is its scale and its fabric. It has to be our #1 priority. But you can't just save the buildings and then cross your arms and say, oh, my work is done here. You have to make them viable. You have to make them relevant. We're not broadening the base of people that are attracted to the town. And there are towns around us that we can look at and say, what are they doing? What are their best practices? You go to Austin, Boulder, Charleston, Burlington, Asheville. You look at those cities and their shopping, it is great. And it's because their leaders have gone out and they've found those businesses and they've brought them home. You should be the #1 economic development officer for your city when you're in charge. And we have a great thing to work with, but there is a lot of missed opportunity in this town. And if we were creating more of a demand, more people would come here. And it's really about making it younger, relevant to younger people. I want our kids to stay here and start businesses. I want them to travel, but I want them to come home and set up shop in this town and affect the agenda.
Well, I think Gavin's right. The city has to go out and recruit those businesses. You've got to explain what we've got here. A lot of people aren't really familiar with Annapolis. And the city also, when you recruit these businesses, has to be willing to work with them through the permitting process. Talk to some businesses that have tried to set up here, you'll find that they had a number of hoops they had to get through that made it really, really difficult. And the word gets out, Annapolis is really not a business-friendly place, so we need to work on that. I think Nevin's right that the owners of these properties, it's their right to do what they will with their properties in terms of what they're going to charge for rent. They know what the numbers are, they know what they have in it, they know what they need. So it's nothing that the government can really do to alter that.
When I had to fill one vacancy, we should make the permit office a shop front on Main Street, and we should put the conference table in the window of that shop front, and then we should put a 100-day counter above that conference table. So at the very least, when you're walking up Main Street, you would see people with their heads in their hands. So that's it.
All right, this is again directed to anyone who can answer it. Would you implement the city dock master plan?
Yes.
For me, that's
You can always elaborate, that's really fine too.
That's one of the reasons I'm running. No one has had the courage to get behind that bill. We do studies, people give blood for them. They spend a year doing a study, they go to meeting after meeting, and then we take that study and we put it on a shelf and it just sits there. Someone has to be brave enough to implement that. I don't think the city.rust plan went far enough. I think we can do better, but it's a start. But nobody wants to get behind it.
I like the idea of going a little further with it, and trying to, as we've discussed at various times, having some green space and some public focus areas and things like that, and making it more attractive to a broader group of people who come down there. But before any of that, you can only have so much fun when you meet people in water. So I would say before any of that, we need to address the flooding issues that we've got.
I think there's parts of the plan that are good, and we've implemented them, like the cultural resource mitigation study. So we've done some of the studies downtown. We're getting ready to start the maritime study, given all of our districts down there. But the plan as a whole, I don't think we can accept it. It's actually one of the issues that got me elected. There was such a pushback from that, the group Save Annapolis got formed that it helped me win the election. So I think there's a lot of flaws in that plan, but there are some good ones that we've implemented.
This next question is about the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis owes over $3 million of funds it received from the federal government, but it was not able to show that the money was properly spent. How would you address problems on the Housing Authority?
I think the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be a forensic audit of the Housing Authority's books to determine about how that money was spent and what really happened. And then there should be some accountability. Once that money's spent and gone, I don't know how we recoup it.
I'm assuming, and following up on John's point, I'm assuming they didn't just take it out of the bank cash. I mean, there have to be checks and debits and bank records to show where the money went. And now, before we get too far down the road of some kind of criminal thing, my understanding is that they're saying this money was not properly accounted for, so we need to do a proper accounting. That doesn't necessarily mean it was stolen or misspent. One of the duties any fiduciary has is to account for what they've done with the money. And so what we need to know is what happened first and foremost.
Obviously, there is no confidence in the Housing Authority anymore, and it's not the future. The future is, first of all, in public housing, we have to gain people's trust again. So people feel like they've been betrayed in these areas, so we need to win their trust. And then we have to find the right private-public partners that fit this town. So that's the solution to this. They can lose that money, but it's not coming back. We have to find other ways to fund our public housing areas. And it can be done, and it can be done right, but it has to be a priority.
So let me say that the Housing Authority is one of the issues I like to leave behind as a legacy. Before I took office, everybody knew the Housing Authority was in trouble. Basically, the philosophy of previous mayors was, look, the federal government runs it, it's not our problem, it's not our responsibility. We don't have to deal with it. We always took a hands-off approach to it. That changed under my administration. I was taught a lesson early on about treating people the same. Everybody in Annapolis, regardless of your skin color or where you live, deserves quality of life. And I'll give you a story. My grandparents had the Royal Restaurant, and it was the first restaurant in the city of Annapolis to desegregate and serve African Americans. And the reason they did that was to teach my parents and me an important lesson. You have to treat everyone the same. And people weren't being treated the same in the Housing Authority. They didn't have city inspectors. Their quality of life was terrible. My administration mandated that those units would be inspected. And there was this big fear. The mayor's coming in, he's going to kick everyone out, he's going to gentrify. Nothing's farther from the truth. Not one person was kicked out. In fact, the opposite happened. People came by and said, thank you, Mayor. We appreciate you coming by. But we've done more than that to affect their quality of life. I've had almost a complete turnover on the board. We don't have time to get into it, but I would stack the board members I've appointed versus anyone else. Finally got the majority last year. They're making positive differences and they're going to build. But it's more than just holding people accountable for money. We have to give people opportunities. I reached out to Comcast. I said, would you offer free and reduced internet? And the first time in the state they're doing that. We built them a new basketball court at Newtown 20 that we didn't have to do. We didn't charge them for their inspection fees the first year. We're working with the housing department. We're working to get them more opportunity and more jobs. I have a passion for it. The people that live there are Annapolitans just like you and I. And I've held them accountable. I have regular meetings with them, and I'll continue to do so.
Next question. As mayor, how would each of you insulate mayoral decisions and initiatives from your personal and business interests? Other question?
I'll start. A, go through the alphabet, right? I have no business interests. You know, I've been a public servant all the time that I've been out of the Marine Corps and here in Annapolis. So I have none. In terms of personal interests, I think all of us, to some extent, are driven by things that we believe in, things we care about, things we know about, to make those kinds of decisions. But to be effective in public office, you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be accessible and approachable, so that people feel very comfortable about coming and talking to you. And by listening, I think you're pretty well going to insulate yourself in personal things from the decisions that you're going to make on behalf of your constituents. It's what I've done for the time I've been in public office.
So I won't be involved in my day-to-day businesses, but on a personal level, I don't do anything without my wife, so I'll probably be asking her a lot of questions.
As a lawyer, I'm pretty familiar with the concept of conflicts of interest and refusal. And as I said, I couldn't keep any business or anything going after that. And so if there did come a situation where I knew somebody personally or thought that I couldn't be fair or impartial, I would probably just accuse myself and ask somebody else to make a decision or at least advise as to whether I was doing the right thing.
This is my full-time job. I had to leave my regular job. I don't hold any outside business interests, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Next question, how are you going to tackle, we discussed this a little bit, how are you going to tackle storm surges and flooding in Annapolis?
I'll take it and I'll echo what I said before, which was before I came into office, there wasn't a plan that took place. We reached out to the state legislature. We didn't get money from them for flood mitigation. Well, Governor Larry Hogan gave us $1 million to start that process. We also went forward and we're talking to business owners. How does this affect their business? How much money are they losing? And we're applying for a $3 million federal grant. I mentioned earlier the cultural resource mitigation study. Which buildings are we going to protect? How are we going to protect them? That was part of the city doc master plan. We also have a partnership with the Naval Academy. There's a number of things I've done. And I'm glad this issue came back up. The comment I made to Senator Astle wasn't a joke. It wasn't to make a point. It was to do a serious difference. The elections that's coming up this year are very important, and we all run on our record. Nevin and Gavin haven't been in elected office. Senator, you've been in office for 30 years. So when I said, I've done these 4 things in 4 years, what have you done in 30? I think everyone's owed an explanation of which specific instances have you got money for the city and which plans. Because if you haven't done it in 30 years, what makes people think you're going to do it now?
You know, you mentioned that earlier, and the answer that I gave you was, I've tried in the past to do some things in the city, but I got no cooperation from the city administration. It's really hard to do things if you're not on the inside, when you're on the outside. In those cases, I was on the outside. Those mayors at those times weren't really interested in listening to what I had to say and what I had to offer.
I would say this about flooding. I know there was an engineering study done back in 2011 about what to do about it. I know it's still not done, and there are 1.5 administrations past that. Now, the mayor may say that's the council's fault, the council may say that's the mayor's fault, but ultimately, everybody in the city is looking at a public resource that gets flooded repeatedly and regularly, and we all know that if it were a private business that owned that area, that they would have done something by now, or they would have sold it and moved away. So the question is, why are we 6 years past an engineering study, which is also done well beyond the problem becoming evident, and we're still talking about, you know, how are we going to start and when are we going to start, and yet we're $150 million in debt in the city on other issues, on bond issues, and we're still letting the water come up over the city dock every few days. That doesn't make sense to me. It just shows that there's some things broken in the way government functions locally.
So what we're doing now, we have to accelerate. It's just a matter of time, we know that. But one thing we did not do is, when we rebuilt the city bulkhead, did we saved $1 million, but did we try to install some backflow preventers, or at least do some pumps to just take care of that one nuisance flooding area? That could have been solved. We didn't try to do that, and that should have been a priority.
Can I respond to that? The money we got from the bulkhead was applied under previous administration. When I came in, I asked those questions. I said, are we going to build the wall higher? They said the money you got for the grant, you have to use exactly as it was designed. You can't move things around. And for the backflow preventers, that's what we're studying. You know, most of the water at City Dock doesn't come over the wall, it comes back up the storm drains. And that's the money we're using to study it. They're also implementing where the new pumping stations are going to go that's going to pump the water out when it comes back. So we are addressing these issues. We've got a long way to go, and it's going to take a lot of money. But we're going to do it, and I'm confident.
One final question.
So I just want to, just remember, Mr. Mayor, you probably forgot that $500,000 I got the city to redo the firing range in the police department.
I remember it well, but the question was about flooding. And again, if we go back to specific instances, this is an important issue. Let's think about this for a second. You said previous mayors haven't worked with you. I find it hard to believe that if you said, I'm going to get you $1 million to fix flooding, that a mayor would stand up there and say, no, we're not interested about it. So we do want to hear specific things that we've got done. Working across the aisle, working with other people.
All right, one final, sort of non-controversial question before we have closing remarks. What would each of you think of banning cars on Main Street and making it a pedestrian way?
It would be extremely unpopular. It would be unpopular, but actually it's something, you know, I think the last person to propose it might have been Louise Beauregard during her Mayoral which just shows you how unpopular an idea it is. Would it be an awful idea? Not if we had sufficient parking nearby. We're talking about a very big project here that I don't think is politically feasible. I think a lot of us would like to see it done if we thought that we had the money and the political will in place to do it, but I don't think that it's going to happen, to be honest.
So if any of you leave here tonight and go to Dining Under the Stars, it's a great example of what you do when you do the Field of Dreams things and you build it. People come. So people come to West Street when no one would have ever thought that would be a place you'd be doing that. When we started Tsunami, people wouldn't even park in front of Tsunami because they thought it was the wrong end of the block, and now it's where locals go. It's where you go and you see your friends. So I think there's a way we can do it that tests the water. I don't think we can shut down Main Street because it would be too much of a shock. But I talked a little bit about the Crosstown Florida trolley idea I had. That trolley goes from Gate 3 to Maryland Ave, which needs traffic and needs the public to go to it. It goes to St. John's, it goes to the Visitor Center, and it goes up and down Main Street. So that would mean a two-way traffic thing going up and down Main Street. But the way you get it to go up and down Main Street, we have to take out the right-hand lane of parking. Everyone will freak out about that. But the give back could be this. The give back could be that you extend the sidewalk about 1.5 feet on the right-hand side. So if you can imagine sitting at the top of Main Street, we'll create a cafe for Treaty Paris, for Starbucks, for Cafe Normandy, for Jaws. And I believe that would re-energize or help to re-energize Main Street and get people used to sitting on Main Street to see how good it can be. Because that's the money view. When you come to this town, you stand at the top of Main Street, you're like, this is where you fall in love. So I think that will start to get people used to that. I think the occasional event where we close it down will be a good test for some merchants. And I think also with Maryland Ave, we close Maryland Ave on weekends as well, as long as we get another food use at the other end so we can bookend it and create cafes.
You know, we have two major roads besides Main Street, King George and Duke of Gloucester. And I've heard the suggestion that maybe Main Street could be closed and one of those would be the inroad to Annapolis. It would be one way in and the other would be one way out, which would give us the ability to move traffic around, except for those times when you needed emergency traffic vehicles and they could go up Main Street. But you know, the idea that downtown from State Church Circle to the city dock can be a walking area, I think is pretty interesting and includes It's a good idea.
So I believe the original question was, do we support getting rid of all the parking on Main Street?
No traffic whatsoever.
Oh, no traffic whatsoever?
None.
The answer is no. And, you know, there's a million reasons I can explain why. I think most of them are pretty much explain themselves. I think the confusion it would cause, the lack of parking for people coming up and down that road, and what it would do, there's already a parking problem in Annapolis. Getting rid of one of the main arteries in our downtown and getting rid of all those vital parking spots, I think would help shut the city down.
It is time for closing remarks. I'll just let you know the order before I give you the instructions. We're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. We'll go to Mr. Young first, Mr. Buckley second, Pantelides third, and Mr. Astle. Each of you can take up to 3 minutes to do closing remarks, and then please remain seated so we can just kind of wrap things up. So, Mr. Young?
All right. We're taking a lot of time. I think most of you, if you're like most people I know, are probably character voters rather than single issue voters who are in one position or stance and they can break their decision on something. So I'll just tell you a little about myself. My name is Nevin Young. I grew up in a small town in Maine. I'm from a working class background. My grandparents were chicken farmers. My father died when I was young, and my mother was a lunch counter at a local 5 and Dime. I served for 10 years in both Maine and Massachusetts International Merit. I graduated at St. John's College here in Annapolis. I first came to Annapolis in 1992 to attend St. John's. I'm also a graduate of George Washington University Law School. I went to law school in the evening and worked for law firms during the day. I've been practicing law here in Annapolis since 2005, and used to work with a couple guys on the Law Street named Bill Ferris and Lee Kress. Some of you may know. I've lived here for quite a long time now. I feel this is my home. They'll probably carry me out feet first. So anyway, if any of you have any questions about policies in particulars, I'd be happy to talk to you, whether by telephone, or email, or in person. I'm always available to you. Thank you.
First of all, I thank the League of Women Voters for having us here. I've been very excited to do this. To let you know a little bit about me, I grew up with a single mum in a house full of women with my grandma and my auntie, and had a big influence on my life. I came to Annapolis nearly 25 years ago. I sailed in here on a beat-up old boat with a couple $100 in my pocket. I got a job as a waiter at Middleton's Tavern. I saw a vacant shop behind Middleton's Tavern, and I pitched to the city to change that, and it became the city's first coffee shop. A few years later, I went to West Street, and there was a vacant shop on West Street, and it was not the best part of town. But we loved it because it was eclectic and it was inclusive, and we started businesses out there. We managed to expand those businesses after 2 years and buy the shop next door and expand Tsunami, and then buy the whole building a few years later. A couple of years after that, we bought 5 buildings that were going to be torn down by the city that we were making an 800-car garage. We stopped that happening. We felt it was important to save houses that were less than 100 years old, because that's what makes Annapolis special, its scale and its fabric. What I see downtown is I see a downtown that hasn't been built for locals. It's all tourist driven, and I love tourists. I'm not against tourists, but if we had actually built a downtown for locals, we would have better shopping, we'd have better restaurants, and tourists would still come because they want to go where locals go. We don't have a trace of an oysterman downtown. We don't have a trace of a crab. If you go to towns in New England, they celebrate lobster. We have amazing modern history in this town that gets ignored. Some of the coolest people on the planet came to this town for 3 decades, from the Supremes through to Hendrix, used to know where Annapolis was. Jay-Z, I'm sure who you all listen to, Jay-Z of his day, the Jay-Z of the time, James Brown, used to love this place and used to hang out with Hoppy Adams, the DJ. There are so many things that we could hang our hats on this town. There's so much untapped potential that I feel is not happening. I'm not a politician. I'm not doing this because I need a job. I'm doing this because I love this city, and I want things in this city that my family can be proud of and my grandkids can be proud of. I want my kids to be able to swim in Spark Creek. I want people to eat things from the Chesapeake Bay and say that's delicious. And with your help, I'll fight for those things. Thank you.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and all my opponents up here on stage. The It's good when we can come here and have a lively, friendly debate and hear about the issues. I want to talk to you about why I ran for mayor. I ran for mayor because I love this city. I had a passion, and I thought I had a vision that we needed for the city of Annapolis. I grew up here, I played sports here, wrestling, lacrosse, soccer, basketball, all that. It was my hometown. It's where my parents brought me up, it's where I live now, or where I plan to raise my family. Got a special connection with this city. But I ran for mayor because things weren't going well. The city was heading in the wrong direction. Tonight we really haven't had a chance to highlight on the financial situations of the city. But before I was mayor, we went through 2 rounds of massive tax increases. The trash got cut back to once a week, and the city had to borrow money just to meet payroll. I'm proud to say that since I've been mayor, I've worked in a bipartisan fashion. We've passed 4 budgets without raising the tax rate in the city of Annapolis. We've lowered trash bills by 46%, and we don't need to borrow money. Many people question the city's finances. Everyone up here has a personal or political opinion. But the people that opinions really matter are the bond rating agencies. And they grill you like you can't believe. And they've given us 2 upgradings in our bond rating. We also have to work for things in the future. We talked about the environment. I got the league's endorsement, but there's so much more we can do. Growing up as a scout and having a love for the environment is so vital. I don't think the city's done enough over the last 4 years to really build on it. We've taken the first step, but we need another 4 years to complete it. The stormwater projects I want to complete are going to be fantastic. Clean up the water quality so you can fish crab and you're not afraid to swim after a storm. There's 4 areas we're going to focus on going forward. The first is public safety, police, and fire. As we mentioned, I implemented a body camera program, 16 new community policing initiatives, and we hired 10 more officers. Our fire department got upgraded to Class 1. We've had record funding in that. The second one I mentioned was the environment. Third is the city's finances. I think it's so important that we don't raise taxes on the citizens. And it's not a philosophical argument, it's that the average person's hurting. When I knock on someone's door, they talk about taxes or fees and everything else. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling to make ends meet. It's not just the city. They said a gallon of milk's gone up, gasoline's gone up, their AT&T bill, their Comcast bill, their tax bill's gone up. Everything keeps going up, except their paycheck. So we have to be good stewards of the public's money, and that's what I try to do. Try to spend everyone's money like it's my own. I think I've been an inclusive mayor. We talked about the African American Hispanic liaison, reaching out to different people, being inclusive. Some people say it's like the sailor's philosophy or mentality. We're all in the same boat. We're all going to rise, we're all going to sink together. I've tried to be the mayor for everyone in Annapolis. I love this job. It's a dream come true. People took a chance on me, and I think I've made a big difference. And if you give me another 4 years, I promise I'll work just as hard. Thank you.
I'm not going to give you my whole background. I think I've been in office long enough. Most of you know I grew up in West Virginia, went to Marshall University, graduated, commissioned in the Marine Corps, and then life went on from there. When I finished the 10 years of active duty in the Marine Corps, I've been in Annapolis. I met and married a local. She graduated from Annapolis High School, class of 58, for any of you out there that may be close to that. We bought a house on Cleveland Street. I raised 2 boys here, one of whom graduated from the United States Naval Academy. The other went south to Clemson, and unfortunately, after he graduated, was killed in an automobile accident. This is my home, and I care about this community. And over the years that I've been in the General Assembly, I've done things that I think it's for the people that elected me. I want to give you a quick example. After the last hurricane, I believe that was Isabel that inundated the area, there was this couple down in South County that had a house that was flooded and had to be repaired, restored. So they moved out of the house, the work was done, and they moved back. Now the house is on the same foundation as it was when they were there before. But the tax assessor came and said, we're going to have to reassess your house and you're going to lose your homestead tax credit. This guy was 85 years old on a fixed income. He was in tears almost because he said, if they raise my taxes, I'm not going to be able to live here. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I went to the assessment's office. Now I'm the kind of person, I don't like to do the phone kind of stuff. I want to do the eye-to-eye. So I talked to the head of the assessment, the tax assessment office, and asked him, what's the deal here? Well, he explained to me that there was a bill that had been introduced previously, and this was an unintended consequence of the bill, which said if you move out of that residence, when you move back, the use changes under the law and it has to be reassessed. With his help, I got a bill drafted which fixed the problem, and I made it 3 years retroactive. and that couple were able to go back to their house. So, you know, there are things that you can do as a public official to help make your community better. Now, there are a lot of issues out there. There are a lot of problems. There are a lot of things that we're faced with. And I will tell you, I don't think any one of us has all the answers to any of these questions. But to be effective, you have to be able to listen and then take the things that you hear and put them into action. The mayor is the chairman of the council. And to be effective as the mayor, you've got to be able to get the votes in the council. Over the years that I've been in the General Assembly as a chairman on a number of different areas, I've been able to get those votes. I know how to get votes. It's about communication. It's about talking to people, keeping them in the loop, and making it work. Thank you.
Thank you to all four of you for a very lively discussion. I would like to call back up to the podium E.C. Chambers with the League of Women Voters.
Desire to serve the people of Annapolis. Our democracy depends on individuals like yourselves who are willing to run for and hold elected office, and you deserve our gratitude and respect. Please also join me in acknowledging our ex-slave moderators, Susan Hogan-Katza, our videotaker, Mark Goldberg, WNAV, Congregation Kneseth Israel staff, our co-sponsored AEW Arundel County Branch, Carolyn Sapella, Chair, and the members of our League's Forum Committee. To become better informed voters, tonight's forum will be posted in its entirety on the internet with a link from our League's website. If you learned something tonight, please tell your family, friends, neighbors, and colleagues. And please remember to vote in the primary election next Tuesday, September 19th. Thank you so much for your time.
This has been the Maryland Crabs podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.